Okay, so we're gonna do a video on Micah Parsons. So I'm gonna fill in everybody on the same page. So let me share my screen here real quick. So I think it's Micah Parsons actually. I can't
Yeah,
enunciate, but
Mika or Micah, same thing.
yeah. Okay, so here's what happened. He just got traded, right? So he has just been traded, but he's dealing with an L4, L5 facet joint sprain in his back, and he may receive injections before Sunday's game. Before trading Parsons last week, the Cowboys prescribed him a 5-day course of prednisone and anti-inflammatory corticosteroid to help him recover from back tightness. We'll get into that because I'm not sure. Okay, and
And
then
it
he
says there they had him on a physical therapy program, whatever that means.
exactly. Okay, so then he practiced on Monday for the first time, but he was limited. Okay, and then we get down to here. So you can see essentially Green Bay from a financial asset standpoint, $188 million contract extension, 120 guaranteed at signing, and 136 in total. Okay, so
Wow.
huge investment, huge investment. Okay, so essentially, so here's the diagnosis: L4, L5 facet joint sprain in the lumbar spine. Okay, and then essentially he's been doing physical therapy, may receive an injection. Okay, over here, and then this is from Adam Schefter, saying the same thing. Okay, so we just wrote a blog post on biological point B and how Matthew Stafford isn't there. We mentioned that Mika is also not at biological point B. Kind of crazy because two of the NFL's highest paid players
Yeah.
entering week one not at biological point B. So, what is biological point B? It means you have the necessary amount of joint function and the necessary amount of reactive strength. Those are the biological sides of point B. Okay, so I'm going to kind of hand it off to you because you sent me this text earlier today saying, "Hey, did you see that they're going to do an epidural injection? Possibly do an epidural injection on this." And then we essentially had a discussion, and that's why we're getting on this. So I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so the reason I sent you this is I was on the train this morning on the way to work, just kind of scrolling through Twitter, X, whatever, and I saw that tweet. And so the gist of that message or that tweet, I don't even know what you call it on X, post, whatever, from Adam Schefter, who follows the NFL. He's an NFL journalist of some sort. Basically documenting that he has a L4, L5 facet sprain. So obviously that's in the lumbar spine. We can come back to that in a little bit. We can also come back to the fact that based on his position, how important that lumbar spine would be.
Mhm.
But reading that message down a little bit further, and again, I don't know if this was just lost in translation or whatever, but it was documented in that article that you just pulled up. They're going to do, at least in his tweet, it said their management is going to be epidural steroid injection. So he's going to get an epidural injection. So first thing that popped into my mind is the management doesn't seem to fit the diagnosis first
Mhm.
and foremost. So, an epidural steroid injection, taken quite literally, is actually injecting the epidural space or structures that exist in the epidural space. Obviously, that's the space of where the dura is and where sensitive neurological structures would be either in the central canal or in the lateral foramen where nerve roots would be, would all be areas that the epidural injection would target. So initially, my thought was, hey, this seems like never mind the fact that the facet joint is kind of in the area, but is not part of that region. It's not part of that space at all. Obviously,
Mhm.
the facet joint anatomically is, I mean, we've spoken about it on Absolute a lot, not specifically the facet joint, but joint function is a viable part of point B in our framework. What do we mean about joint function? We mean, uh, as you sort of mentioned there, we mean, health of the joint. So the joint has proper lubrication, surfaces are all intact, tissues are all intact, so on and so forth. In addition to that, the joint has enough space in it to allow the athlete to do what they need to do, get into positions they need to get into, so on and so forth. Obviously, when you think about that specifically, the joint, it is not part of the neurological stuff that exists in the epidural area of the spine. So that was initially what stood out for me in reading it this morning was that the management doesn't seem to match the punishment doesn't seem to match the crime. So the management doesn't seem to match the anatomy that is seemingly problematic with respect to this athlete. The second thing that really stands out, the more that you think about it, is it seems how do I want to say this? The management in this case, which is a random, and I'm using the word random because injecting a corticosteroid is kind of like taking an anti-inflammatory. You're kind of hoping that it gets into the systemic circulation and does the job that it's supposed to do via chemical signals and so on and so forth. So in this case, what we're ultimately being told as fans of the NFL or practitioners that deal with these athletes, whatever the case is that we're being told that we don't really care about the injury, we don't really care about the status of the athlete. We just want to make the athlete not hurt so the athlete can then play is ultimately what we're being told in this management. Now, in the article, it does say that he had been undergoing some physical therapy. Who knows what that entails, and hopefully it was good physical therapy management. Um, but again, when you put all this in context, and you read it out in the article there, this is an athlete that is paid a ton of money, 188 million, 136 of which is guaranteed. So obviously for the organization, he's a huge asset. And what you're saying is that even though we have this huge asset that we need on the field to make us better, as much as possible, we don't really care about the athlete. You know what I'm saying? We
Mhm.
just care that the athlete can tell us, hey, I don't feel that anymore, and therefore I can play. And ultimately, we've seen this story before in numerous sports where then it becomes a situation where, well, I can play on Sunday, but then I can't practice, right? And then I'll
Mhm.
get another, and then if I do try to practice and I get a little bit of soreness, then I'm back getting another injection so they can play on Sunday. But then I can't practice. And ultimately what
Mhm.
happens is the bad days begin to far outnumber the good days. And now we're, in a situation where the athlete is so deviated from an optimal point B that you're just trying to get to the off season to try to build some sort of qualities back. And so that's sort of what I initially thought and what I brought to your attention so that we could have this discussion. Because ultimately, again, we get it in high performance. Obviously, athletes want to be on the field. Organization want the best athletes on the field. But in addition to that, we have to consider the actual athlete and not just what is the management that we can throw at the athlete that ultimately just makes the athlete not feel pain. because
Mm.
that is currently what this management is all about. Getting back to it again, and if you want to jump in at any time, go ahead. But getting back to it again, I don't know a lot about the the intricacies of NFL football, but he is a pass rusher.
Hmm.
So you know the his spine is hugely important to be successful at his position, being able to move and rotate and flex and extend and you know give contact, absorb contact when needing to absorb contact. So again, when you put it under the lens of you know what his demands are at the level of competition, it's just it's just so unsatisfactory how they are ultimately going to be managing this athlete.
Yeah. So, okay. So, a couple things that I heard you say is one, there's a difference between doing stuff to manage pain, right? And then,
Yep. Hmm.
and then, and I'll let you like discuss like treating pain because that's something that technically we don't treat, right? Obviously, like that's not, but then and then programming to point B, right?
Hmm.
So, like technically, from my experience when I worked in medical, when I worked at the doctor's office, we would do injections like that to open up windows of pain, like pain-free windows, so that we could do the proper treatment to then
Hmm.
actually like normalize whatever this pathology it was that was diagnosed. In this
Hmm.
case, what it sounds like is there's pain. They're probably trying to hopefully, let's say, normalize the pathology. But it seems like if you're just treating the pain, you're not going to get them to point B. And so what you're saying, and it's a corticosteroid, so it's going to degrade the tissue that's already degrading,
Right.
and and we haven't even played 1 week yet.
Right. And to throw more context on that, whether it's relevant at this point in time now or not, is new player, new organization, new medical staff,
Yeah,
new performance staff, right? So
for
you
sure.
know, and again, I get it from Green Bay's perspective. Like this is a tricky situation because you know they may want to do more than what is actually being reported. But again, there's building trust with the athlete. There's all these factors that go into this that that have to be considered as well. And so you know we understand all of that, but I think the point that we really wanted to kind of lay out here is that pain management is is how do I want to say this? Pain management is the first step in dealing with any athlete that's injured, obviously, or any client that's injured. But pain management is not specific to any physical capacity in point B.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Hmm.
so, and that goes the other way as well, meaning that if you feel like you are managing some physical capacity in point B, you effectively aren't managing pain.
Hmm.
So do you see what I mean? Like
Yeah, for sure.
it can work both ways. And so if we know the actual injury and you know a facet sprain, let's put it in terms that you know those associated with absolute would understand is a facet sprain basically means that there is maybe an element of you know capsular tissue disorganization within that facet joint.
Hmm.
We can also assume that the facet joint is not moving in its fundamental movement patterns. So
Hmm.
therefore the gliding of the two components of the facet joint is not occurring as it should. And then you would have an inflammatory process associated with that, depending on how long this has been